The ballroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers, gold light reflecting off polished marble floors and towering glass windows. Waiters moved like clockwork between clusters of executives, investors, and dignitaries dressed in tailored suits and silk gowns. At the center of it all stood Richard Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Technologies, a man whose name carried weight in boardrooms across the country. Tonight was meant to celebrate success, record profits, a global expansion, a bold new partnership. But in the far corner of the room, near a towering indoor palm, sat someone who felt completely invisible. 8-year-old Emily Whitmore watched the room with wide brown eyes. She wore a soft blue dress and small silver shoes that sparkled every time she shifted her feet. Her dark curls were pinned neatly to one side. She looked beautiful, like a princess at a royal banquet. Yet no one spoke to her, because Emily was deaf, and most of the adults in that glittering ballroom did not know how to speak her language. People smiled politely at her when they passed. Some patted her shoulder awkwardly. A few waved, but their conversations floated about her like distant clouds. Laughter she could not hear, jokes she could not follow, words she could not access. She had grown used to this quiet loneliness in loud rooms. Across the ballroom, Daniel Harper adjusted the cuff of his borrowed suit jacket. It was slightly too large, but he wore it carefully, as if afraid to wrinkle it. Daniel was not an executive, he wasn't an investor, he wasn't even a manager. He was a maintenance supervisor contracted to service Whitmore Technologies' facilities. But tonight, for the first time, contractors had been invited to the annual celebration. Daniel almost hadn't come. He didn't own many suits, he didn't feel comfortable among powerful people, and at home, waiting for him, was his 6-year-old daughter Lily, who had insisted he attend. "You should go, Daddy," she had signed with enthusiastic hands. "You always say we must be brave." Lily had been born deaf. Daniel had learned sign language the hard way, through late-night classes, online videos, and countless hours of practicing in front of a mirror after work. At first, he had felt clumsy, slow, frustrated, but Lily's bright smile whenever he signed correctly had made every effort worth it. Now, as Daniel stood alone near a refreshment table, he noticed the little girl in the blue dress sitting by herself. She looked familiar. Then he remembered he had seen her once before in the lobby holding Richard Whitmore's hand. That was the CEO's daughter. Daniel watched as 2 women approached Emily. They bent down, speaking animatedly, their lips moving quickly. Emily tried to read them. She guessed at words, she nodded politely. But when they laughed and turned away mid-conversation, she was left staring at their backs, confusion flickering across her face. Daniel felt something twist inside his chest. He knew that look. He had seen it on Lily's face at birthday parties, at playgrounds, at family gatherings when cousins forgot to include her. He hesitated. This was the CEO's daughter. This was not his place. But then he remembered Lily's hand signing, "Be brave." Daniel took a steady breath and walked across the ballroom. He crouched gently a few feet away from Emily so he wouldn't startle her. He waited until she looked up at him. Then he smiled and signed, "Hi, my name is Daniel." Emily's eyes widened. Her entire posture changed in an instant. She blinked quickly, as if unsure she had seen correctly. Then her small hands lifted. "You know sign language?" she signed back, movements fast with excitement. Daniel nodded. "Yes, my daughter is deaf too." Emily's face lit up like the chandeliers above them. "No one here signs," she admitted. "They try, but they don't know." Daniel nodded with understanding. "That must feel lonely." She nodded slowly. For the next few minutes, the noise of the ballroom disappeared for both of them. They talked about school, about favorite books, about how Emily loved painting and hated math. Daniel told her about Lily's obsession with dinosaurs and purple sneakers. Emily laughed silently, shoulders shaking. Across the room, Richard Whitmore noticed something unusual. His daughter was smiling. Not politely, not awkwardly, genuinely. He watched the man kneeling beside her, someone he vaguely recognized from facilities reports. They were signing, fluently. Richard felt a lump rise unexpectedly in his throat. He had hired private tutors, he had arranged speech therapy, he had funded research programs for hearing technologies. He had tried to build the world around Emily so she wouldn't feel different. But he never fully understood that sometimes she didn't need the world changed. She just needed someone to meet her where she was. Richard crossed the ballroom. Daniel noticed him first and immediately straightened up. "I'm so sorry, sir," Daniel began out loud, unsure if he had overstepped. But before he could continue, Emily tugged her father's sleeve excitedly. "Dad, he signs! He has a daughter like me!" Richard looked at Daniel carefully. "You learned for your daughter?" he asked. "Yes, sir. It was the only way to make sure she never felt alone in her own home." The words struck deeper than Daniel realized. Richard swallowed. "I know some sign," he admitted quietly, "but not as much as I should." Emily squeezed his hand gently, signing something Daniel didn't fully catch. Richard smiled softly at his daughter before turning back to Daniel. "Would you," Richard asked slowly, "consider coming by sometime, maybe helping me improve, and perhaps spending time with Emily? She doesn't get many chances to talk freely like this." Daniel blinked, stunned. "Of course," he said. Over the next few weeks, something unexpected blossomed. Daniel began visiting the Whitmore home on Saturdays. What started as informal sign practice sessions turned into shared dinners. Lily and Emily became inseparable, two girls who finally didn't have to explain themselves. Richard, once distant and absorbed in corporate demands, began dedicating time every evening to learning sign language properly. He practiced in front of mirrors just as Daniel once had. He stumbled, he laughed at his mistakes, but he persisted. For the first time, father and daughter had full conversations without barriers. One evening, after watching the two girls chase each other across the Whitmore garden, Richard turned to Daniel. "You didn't just speak to my daughter that night," he said quietly. "You saw her." Daniel shook his head gently. "I just did what any father would do." Richard paused. Not everyone would. A month later, Daniel received an unexpected call to Whitmore's executive office. Nervous, he assumed he had done something wrong. Instead, Richard handed him a folder. "I'm creating a new division at Whitmore Technologies. Accessibility Integration. We design products used by millions. It's time we ensure they are fully inclusive." Daniel looked confused. "I don't have a business degree," he admitted. "You have something better," Richard replied. "Perspective, experience, heart." Daniel was offered a managerial position overseeing accessibility consulting, working alongside engineers and designers to ensure inclusivity wasn't an afterthought. It changed his life. The promotion provided stability, better hours, and the ability to be home with Lily every evening. But more than that, it gave him purpose beyond survival. At the official launch of Whitmore's Mu Accessibility Initiative, Richard stood at the podium. Beside him stood Emily, and in the front row sat Daniel and Lily. Richard signed as he spoke, his movements deliberate but confident. "This journey began," he said out loud, "when someone chose to see my daughter, not as different, but deserving of connection." He glanced towards Daniel. A simple act of inclusion created more than a conversation. It built friendship, it built understanding, it built change. The audience rose in applause. But Emily didn't need to hear it. She could see it. And that was enough. Because sometimes the most powerful transformations don't begin with grand speeches or million-dollar decisions. Sometimes they begin with one person kneeling in a crowded room, choosing to bridge a gap others failed to notice. And in that quiet space between isolation and connection, two families found something far greater than opportunity.